Okay, so chances are you're probably here because you saw the 5 worst things about studying architecture video I did previously. If you haven't already seen that, make sure you go and check that out. That was me being as honest as I could about some of the downfalls about studying this profession. And I only felt it was fair to be honest about some of the frustrations, some of the difficulties a lot of students and professionals face being in this field. And so in the same way, this video is about being as honest as I can. And the truth is, there are so many amazing things about studying architecture. And that's why today's video is about the 5 best things about studying architecture. Before I get into the 5 points, you might notice that some of the points overlap with the previous video where I talked about the 5 worst things, and that's because sometimes it's just a matter of perspective. Many of the things that I actually highlighted were the worst things about architecture school in my previous video are actually also some of the best things, and hopefully by the end of the video that will all make sense. Okay, so number 1, architecture school and education is open to a really large skill set, and that is an amazing thing, because what that means is whether you have a specialty or a passion for writing or historical research or scientific research, or whether you're really good at mathematics, whether you're amazing at art, poetry, or whether you like philosophy, literally almost anything. If you have that creative juice, and sometimes not so creative juice, there's always a place for you in architecture. And that is obviously one of the most amazing things because it's super inclusive when it comes to your skill sets. And what you find is when people enter architecture education, they usually find their own niche and they find their own kind of strengths, and they really build on that. And that is such a benefit of studying architecture because you are really able to explore as many different things as you can, but at the same time be confident that what you have as a creative or as a person, as a skill set, is probably going to find some value somewhere in architecture. And that's also one of the reasons why if you go to a top architecture university, you'll also find the large variety of studios often cater to so many different things. They're distinctly different things. So for example, at the University of Westminster, where I did my master's, there's one studio which is all about parametric design and looking at biophilic geometry and taking inspiration from nature and translating that into built structure. And that is amazing for anybody who has a scientific mind or somebody who's really motivated by looking into nature. Or some studios, you might even be doing crazy creative chant interaction and musical board games. Yeah, board games. I've seen studios where literally they do the craziest thing. But at the same time, there's also studios where, you know, the focus is all about how to do incredible drawings, where they have a really strong social focus. There's also studios where they really push you to come up with entrepreneurial ideas. There really is something for everyone in architecture school, and that is a massive positive. Number 2, you really end up learning visionary thinking in architecture school. You're really pushed to be highly ambitious about what your vision is for the world. And that's quite a unique thing when it comes to university education, because, you know, what other profession or university course will allow you to speculate on social revolution and change through social political initiatives? Architecture really sets you up for being a visionary thinker. And as a result of that, you can really let your imagination run wild. Because one thing which is really common in architecture school is exploring fictional narratives. Now, sometimes people look at that in a really negative way because why are we going into a university course where we have to come out of university and do some really pragmatic things like build buildings? And we're learning about dystopic fictional narratives in university. What's that about? The truth of the matter is, architecture school prepares you how to think and be a visionary thinker. So when you come out of architecture school, employers are looking for that proficiency. They're looking, are you able to look at the bigger picture of so many complicated things going on? And are you able to grasp all those complex concepts and fit them into a coherent concept? And so visionary thinking allows you to be able to think in these complex ways about wider society and how the world works, and also how narratives work and how stories work. You really do have that freedom in architecture school to push the boundaries. And that's why it's also very difficult, but at the same time, you really will excel in this field and maybe even beyond. Okay, 3. 3 is you're constantly knowledge building. And what I mean by that is kind of relating to the point I just mentioned, because you're thinking of the broader picture and you're thinking about all sorts of different fields and disciplines all coming into one, and you're thinking about, how the world works, that also means you're looking at so many different professions. Just in one project, you might end up becoming a little bit of a specialist in socio-political theory, or you might become a little bit of a historical expert in Japanese vernacular, or doing deep research into technological innovations of post-industrial revolution, or you might end up looking at how the history of data collection has been evolving throughout the years. Or you might do something completely different, like become a little bit of a historical expert on Amazonian tribes, because architecture education requires you to learn about all sorts of different professions, cultures, perspectives, in order to inspire you to create the best architectural outcome. And what that means is you're always up to date with current affairs and innovation in technology and economy. You end up becoming a little bit of a polymath and somewhat of a generalist. And so that brings me on to number 4, which is architecture school is never boring. And again, kind of related to the points I've just said. You're always learning about different things, and therefore your studio learning environment is incredibly enriched with all sorts of activities. And what you end up doing in one project might vary from model making to drawing to painting to doing oil pastel studies to then looking at digital fabrication, and then looking at how you can digitally model stuff and then bring that back into the physical world, and then model it more, and then draw some more. And then you might be doing some research and writing to go with that research. There's all sorts of different things you'll end up doing, and therefore your studio learning environment is so fun. It's a very unique environment to be able to go into university and have your own little studio space with crazy creative thinkers all around you, and you're there to literally bounce ideas off each other and help each other. And it really is a truly collaborative environment, and that means it should never really be boring. It's always going to be fun. One thing I can admit is, yes, architecture is a difficult course, but never was I not able to make it what I wanted to make it. You have the freedom to do what you want, and therefore you have no excuse to not make your journey a fun journey. And so the 5th and final thing is the multidisciplinary potential of architecture. Now this one's a huge one for me, because I have built an entire podcast as a result of this potential in architecture. And hopefully you've all seen it, and you've all been listening to the recent episodes. If you haven't, make sure you check out my channel page and my podcast website, which I'll leave a link for in the description. I do all sorts of episodes with amazing thinkers and professionals talking about this multidisciplinary potential, brainstorming ideas about how we can use our architecture education to do vastly broad and powerful things in the world. And so that's it. That literally is one of the most amazing things about architecture school, which is all of these things that I've mentioned become your tool sets to take out into the world and do many different things. And I've said this already, architecture is a difficult course, but the reason it's so difficult is because the tool set you end up with when you leave architecture school is one which will let you jump into many different professions. The reason being is you, as an architectural graduate, are probably really proficient at various different things like graphic design, artistic thinking, creative direction, project management, academic research, and even humanitarian or socio-economic innovation, or even technological innovation. You might even be a whiz at coding, because you have the potential to do a lot of coding in architecture when it comes to 3D design. So the opportunities are really endless, and that is such a powerful thing. But there's also something interesting about this, which is I don't think our profession has fully woken up to this reality. I think this is a new thing emerging, and when you listen to my podcast, you'll understand what I mean by that. We truly are living in a time, in an era where architecture is transforming, and the role of the architect is transforming as technology evolves, but also as we reevaluate our roles in a profession that is struggling. And the reason I say it's struggling is because if you see my previous video, architecture salaries aren't great when you graduate, and so a lot of the talk has been about why our salaries suck and why we have to put so much time and effort into a course where the payout is arguably not proportional or worth it. And the reason I think this is because we do so much in architecture school, but we leave university just to join a practice where we are designing a building. And the truth of the matter is that's really not fulfilling our potential. All those hours and all those years we've spent in architecture school becoming visionary thinkers, learning the most broad skill set to apply to so many different fields, leaves us with the outcome of just a building. And don't get me wrong, designing buildings is an incredibly complex, rich and rewarding process, and in of itself includes some of the most inspiring moments where when you see your building come to completion and life take place within it is an indescribable feeling of satisfaction. But at the same time, architecture firms are also evolving to become much broader thinkers, and their services are evolving too. And so that's where I'm going to leave it. Please subscribe. I don't usually ask you to subscribe because it feels a bit awkward, but I've been told you should ask people to subscribe because sometimes they just need a bit of a prod. And so I'm prodding you right now. But finally, also, I really hope you can leave a comment, leave your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree with me, and be blunt. If you think some of my points were crap, let me know. If you liked some of my points, let me know as well. It'd be nice to know that some of this actually has value. And yeah, I'll see you on the next video.